Okay. This is a short verse. I'll repeat, and then if devotees can also repeat. Kalam charantam srijatisha asrayam pradhana umbhyam naradeva satyakrit. Kalam charantam srijatisha asrayam pradhana umbhyam naradeva satyakrit. Kalam charantam srijatisha asrayam pradhana pumbhyam narada satyakrit. Short, everybody wants to recite. Okay, word for word. Okay, please go ahead, Prabhu.
Kalam charantam srijatisha ashrayam pradhana pumbhyam naradeva satyakrit.
Okay.
Kalam sarantam srijatisha ashrayam pradhana pumbhyam naradeva satyakrit.
Very nice, thank you. So word for word, kalam time, charantam moving, srijati creates, Isha the Supreme Personality of Godhead, asrayam shelter, pradhana for the material energy, Umbhyam and the living entity, Naradeva, a ruler of men, Satya, true, Krit, creator. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. O great King, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the controller of the material and spiritual energies, who is certainly the creator of the entire cosmos, creates the time factor to allow the material energy and the living entity to act within the limits of time. Thus, the Supreme Personality is never under the time factor, nor under the material energy. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. One should not think that the Lord is dependent on the time factor. He actually creates a situation by which material nature acts and by which the conditioned soul is placed under material nature. Both the conditioned soul and material nature act within the time factor, but the Lord is not subject to the actions and reactions of time, for time has been created by him. To be more clear, Srila Viswanath Chakravarti Thakur says that creation, maintenance, and annihilation are all under the supreme will of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 4:7, the Lord says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijami aham. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharat, and a prominent rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Since Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the controller of everything, when he appears, he is not within the limitations of material time. Janma karma chame divyam. In this verse, the words Kalam charantam srijatisha ashrayam indicate that although the Lord acts within time, whether sattvagun, rajagun, or tamagun is prominent, one should not think that the Lord is under time's control. Time is within his control, for he creates time to act in a certain way. He is not working under the control of time. The creation of the material world is one of the Lord's pastimes. Everything is fully under his control. Since creation takes place when Rajagun is prominent, the Lord creates the necessary time to give facilities for Rajagun. Similarly, he also creates the necessary times for maintenance and annihilation. Thus, this verse establishes that the Lord is not under the limitations of time. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna. Krishna is the supreme controller. Satchitananda Vigraha. He possesses a blissful spiritual body. Anadi. He is not subordinate to anything. As the Lord confirms in the Bhagavad Gita 7:7, Mata Parataram Nanyat Kinchit Asti Dhananjaya. O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Nothing can be above Krishna, for he is the controller and creator of everything. The Mayavadi philosophers say that this material world is mithya, false, and one should therefore not bother about mithya creation. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. This is not correct. Here it is said Satyakrit. Whatever is created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Satyam Param, cannot be called Mithya. The cause of the creation is Satya, true. So how can the effect of the cause be Mithya? The very word Satyakrit is used to establish that everything created by the Lord is factual, never false. The creation may be temporary, but it is not false. Om Agyanatimarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurulmitam Yana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Panchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Revacha Patita Nama Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Giridhar Shivasti Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the chapter continues. Of course, the title of the chapter is The Supreme Lord is Equal to Everyone. And in this chapter, of course, Parikshit Maharaj is making some inquiries about how the Supreme Lord is actually equal to everyone. He is inquiring from Sukadeva Goswami in a very humble, submissive way. And so if sometimes we have some questions about what is the meaning of a humble submission, a submissive way, we can, read verses like these, where Parikshit Maharaj is making inquiries about how the Lord is equal to everyone. Because, of course, we read earlier in previous chapters how for the sake of Lord Indra, the king of heaven, so many demons were killed. And so in this way, one can think that the Lord is very, very partial to the demigods. And so Sukadeva Goswami goes point by point, as we'll find in the next many verses in this chapter, about how, proving the point, how the Supreme Lord is equal to everyone. And then, of course, the second question Parikshit Maharaj has later in the chapter, we'll learn more about that detail of how Shishupal, although he was very, very inimical towards Krishna, from his very childhood, he was always blaspheming Krishna. How is it that he merged in the body of Lord Krishna when he was killed? So, these are perplexing matters that on the one hand, the Lord is saying that he is equal to everyone, but at the same time, how is it seemingly that he may be partial in different circumstances? But this chapter is a very nice chapter. It, puts into perspective how the Lord is equal to everyone. Because if we look at, so many demons that were killed, all of them achieved liberation. And so, that very fact also shows that the Lord is not partial. Even the demons become qualified to get liberation. So in this verse specifically, the time factor is discussed, and how, time acts in material nature, and how the Lord is not under the control of time factor. He is the creator of this time factor. And then I found one nice verse in the Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 23:2, where it's very nicely described this time factor and the workings of the time factor. It's in relation to Dhruva Maj and the pole star planet. And yeah, I guess I can read both the translation. The purport is a short purport, but it's very nicely puts into perspective. Established by the supreme will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the pole star, which is the planet of Maj Dhruva, constantly shines as the central pivot for all the stars and planets. The unsleeping, invisible, most powerful time factor causes these luminaries to revolve around the pole star without cessation. So in the purport, Prabhupada is discussing what that means. It is distinctly stated herein that all the luminaries, the planets and the stars, revolve by the influence of the supreme time factor. The time factor is another feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everyone is under the influence of the time factor. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so kind and loves his devotee Maharaj Dhruva so much that he has placed all the luminaries under the control of Dhruva's planet and has arranged for the time factor to work under him or with his cooperation. Everything is actually done according to the will and direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But to make his devotee Dhruva the most important individual within the universe, the Lord has placed the activities of the time factor under his control. So I didn't know that the pole star planet is actually controlling, or like Prabhupada says, working in cooperation with the pole star planet, this time factor. Then another verse from the Bhagavatam 3:10-11 gives a little bit more information about this time factor. Maitreya said, eternal time is the primeval source of the interactions of the three modes of material nature. It is unchangeable and limitless, and it works as the instrument of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his pastimes in the material creation. Purport. The impersonal time factor is the background of the material manifestation as the instrument of the Supreme Lord. It is the ingredient of assistance offered to material nature. No one knows where time began and where it ends, and it is time only which can keep a record of the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material manifestation. This time factor is the material cause of creation and is therefore a self-expansion of the personality of Godhead. Time is considered the impersonal feature of the Lord. The time factor is also explained by modern men in various ways. Some accept it almost as it is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. For example, in Hebrew literature, time is accepted in the same spirit as a representation of God. It is stated therein, God who at sundry times and in diverse manners spake in time past unto the fathers by the prophets. Metaphysically, time is distinguished as absolute and real. Absolute time is continuous and is unaffected by the speed or slowness of material things. Time is astronomically and mathematically calculated in relation to the speed, change, and life of a particular object. Factually, however, time has nothing to do with the relativities of things. Rather, everything is shaped and calculated in terms of the facility offered by time. Time is the basic measurement of the activity of our senses, by which we calculate past, present, and future. But in factual calculation, time has no beginning and no end. Chanakya Pandit says that even a slight fraction of time cannot be purchased with millions of dollars. And therefore, even a moment of time lost without profit must be calculated as the greatest loss of time. Time is not subject to any form of psychology, nor are the moments objective realities in themselves, but they are dependent on particular experiences. Therefore, Jiva Goswami concludes that the time factor is intermixed with activities, actions, and reactions of the external energy of the Lord. The external energy or material nature works under the superintendence of the time factor as the Lord himself. And that is why material nature appears to have produced so many wonderful things in the cosmic manifestation. So there we have it, some detailed description of this time factor and its connection and relation to the material world. So, of course, Prabhupada is making the point in the purport that as far as Krishna is concerned, he is the original primeval Lord, creator of this time factor, which mixes and works very naturally within the material energy. But of course, Krishna is not under the influence of time, even though sometimes it may seem that, Krishna appeared 5,000 years ago, these ways, activities according to past, present, and future, still he is not under the control of time. He is completely independent of time. And like this verse was quoting, this previous verse was quoting that, many philosophies accept the explanation of time, similar to the explanation given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that it is a representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, of course, the Bhagavatam clarifies and says it is an energy of the Lord, similar to how the material energy is the external energy of the Lord. And so in this way, this time factor is working under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is for the purpose of pastime alone. And of course, even the material world and the creation thereof are all pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then Bhagavad Gita 9:10 confirms the material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So what is the point of all of this, in relation to our day-to-day lives? Our understanding is that as living entities, we are parts and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have the same quality of the Supreme Lord, but of course, quantitatively, we are very, very minute. So we are all in the material world undergoing some material experience, but our real home is in the spiritual world. So the idea is, how are we making a plan to go back home, back to Godhead? And of course, what will be our condition in the spiritual world? So, going to the spiritual world, we understand there's many different types of liberation. There's Salokya liberation, Saristi liberation. Well, let's just describe each one. Salokya liberation is having the same residence as the Lord. Saristi liberation is another type of liberation where the opulence of the devotee becomes equal to the Supreme Lord. Samipya liberation is close proximity. In this kind of liberation, a devotee has great fortune of being in the personal association of the Lord. And Sarupya Mukti, in the fifth type and final type of liberation, a devotee develops bodily features which are exactly similar to the bodily features of the Supreme Lord. And then, of course, there is the merging into the Brahman, the effulgence of the Lord. And so, we see many of the demons that were killed by Krishna, they all achieved this type of liberation where they merged. But as devotees, we want to be eternal servants of the Supreme Lord and not, attain any one of these other types of liberation. We want to go back home, back to Godhead, and engage in the Lord's service. So in that case, we want to go back home, back to Godhead, back to Golok Vrindavan, where we can serve the Lord. These are the different types of liberation. Very, very, well, not possible that, if one merges with the Brahman, then, there's no possibility of service. So we want to develop this mood where we perpetually are able to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the whole point of engaging in devotional service, it is by far the easiest method of going back home, back to Godhead. Whilst we say devotional service is very, very nice, we should not forget that devotional service to the Lord is not a material activity. We should always remind ourselves, of course, we're very, very forgetful, that devotional service is very, very rare. And so we should not take it for granted for anything. Devotional service to the Lord is not an activity of this material world. It is part of the spiritual world where eternity, bliss, and knowledge predominate. So this should be the point that, of course, here at Gita Nagari, there's so much of services. Yesterday's class discussed self-care, and then Taraka Prabhu was very nicely pointing out that, self-care is very, very nice, for devotees to have some balance in their life. But at the same time, there is the tendency to take it to the extreme of using that as an excuse, self-care, not to do devotional service. And, Taraka Prabhu was giving examples of, how much the devotees had sacrificed during Prabhupada's time especially. Still, so many of them continue to sacrifice, on a regular basis. But, these days, of course, we have so much of gratitude for all the devotees, Prabhupada disciples especially, that made, so much of sacrifice for us to have what we have today. Gita Nagari wouldn't, be anything close to what it is today had it not been, for so many devotees that had made so many sacrifices to purchase Gita Nagari, to, pay off all the debts, that Gita Nagari had. So in this way, we're forever grateful to all of these devotees that made so much of sacrifice. And it is due to their sacrifices, that Krishna consciousness is expanding so much throughout the world. Only because so many devotees made so many sacrifices. Taraka Prabhu was also explaining how there was no question in the early days of saying no, not available, that I've already done so much of service for today. It didn't matter, in the early days. And we can see that, so many devotees that had sacrificed so much in the early days, Devamrita Maharaj, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, going under the iron curtain, endangering their lives, sacrificing so much in the early days, that we, have so many examples to be grateful for what we have today. And so we can see that, Krishna also mentions in the Bhagavad Gita that he's able to carry what we lack, especially for devotees that are making tremendous sacrifices. And like I mentioned, in so many times before, that yes, Krishna consciousness, is a gradual process, and still we should always understand that, Krishna consciousness is a very, very personal thing, that sometimes, we can make a show of doing so many services, but what is actually going on in our heart? Is the cleansing happening? Is all these layers of material conditioning being shed? Or is, our hard hearts still remaining hard, but externally, showing that we are doing so many devotional activities. So this is not the process for softening the heart. One has to be able to do his services in a very loving way. And in this way, when it is done with so much of affection and love for the Supreme Lord, then what will happen is Krishna will take notice of someone doing service. This is what we want. This is the perfection, that we do our service in such a loving, amazing way, that Krishna will be able to take notice. This is the real perfection. So it's a very, very personal thing. Externally it may seem like we're doing so many things, I'm so busy, but what's going on in the heart level? This is what matters most. So we can see that the time factor is existing within the material realm. Its purpose is there, to make everything work very nicely within the material world, so that there is this concept of past, present, and future. However, as this time factor does not control the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but it's actually under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then relating to devotees and devotional service, there was a nice verse, Srimad Bhagavatam 4:31-21. The Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes very dear to those devotees who have no material possessions, but are fully happy in possessing the devotional service of the Lord. Indeed, the Lord relishes the devotional activities of such devotees. Those who are puffed up with material education, wealth, aristocracy, and fruitive activities are all very proud of possessing material things. and they often deride the devotees. Even if such people offer the Lord worship, the Lord never accepts them. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is dependent on his pure devotees. He does not even accept the offerings of those who are not devotees. A pure devotee is one who feels he does not possess anything material. A devotee is always happy in possessing the devotional service of the Lord. Devotees may sometimes appear materially poor, but because they are spiritually advanced and enriched, they are most dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such devotees are free from attachment to family, society, friendship, children, and so on. They abandon affection for all these material possessions and are always happy in possessing the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. The Supreme Personality of Godhead understands the position of his devotee. If a person derides a pure devotee, he is never recognized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, the Supreme Lord never excuses one who offends a pure devotee. There are many examples of this in history. A great mystic, yogi, Durvasa Muni, offended the great devotee Ambarish Maharaj. The great sage Durvasa was to be chastised by the Sudarshan Chakra of the Lord. Even though the great mystic directly approached the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he was never excused. Those on the path of liberation should be very careful not to offend a pure devotee. So, of course, the original question that Parikshit Maharaj was asking, that it seems like the Lord is very partial to his devotees, as indicated by him killing the demons. But we see that the fact is the Supreme Lord is impartial or equal to everyone. And if there is some partiality, then, this is what Krishna wants, this is what Krishna desires. And so we see in this particular verse that it is explained that the Lord is dependent on his pure devotees. So it's not a question of wealth, but a question of love for the Supreme Lord. We all understand we have free will, and it is because of misuse of our free will that we have, ended up in this material world, now undergoing this material experience. It's the very thing that got us into trouble. So we had to leave the spiritual world and come down to the material realm and undergo these material activities. Bhagavad Gita 9:29, the Lord says, I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. So I'll quickly read that because Prabhupada very nicely explains that verse. One may question here that if Krishna is equal to everyone and no one is his special friend, then why does he take a special interest in the devotees who are always engaged in his transcendental service? But this is not discrimination, it is natural. Any man in this material world may be very charitably disposed. So, we've seen in the material world so many philanthropists are there, donating millions and millions and millions of dollars. Yet he has a special interest in his own children. The Lord claims that every living entity in whatever form is his son. And so he provides everyone with a generous supply of the necessities of life. He is just like a cloud which pours rain all over, regardless of whether it falls on a rock or land or water. But for his devotees, he gives specific attention. Such devotees are mentioned here. They are always in Krishna conscious. So Prabhupada says 24 hours a day be Krishna conscious. And therefore, they are always transcendently situated in Krishna. The very phase Krishna consciousness suggests that those who are in such consciousness are living transcendentalists situated in him. The Lord says here distinctly, my te, they are in me. Naturally, as a result, the Lord is also in them. This is reciprocal. This also explains the word ye yata mam. Prapadyante tam tateva bhajami aham. Whoever surrenders unto me proportionately, I take care of him. So we see that, as far as surrender is concerned, I proportionally take care of him. This transcendental reciprocation exists because both the Lord and the devotee are conscious. When a diamond is set in a gold ring, it looks very nice. The gold is glorified, and at the same time, the diamond is glorified. The Lord and the living entity eternally glitter. And when a living entity becomes inclined to the service of the Supreme Lord, he looks like gold. The Lord is a diamond, and so this combination is very nice. Living entities in a pure state are called devotees. The Supreme Lord becomes the devotee of his devotees. If a reciprocal relationship is not present between the devotee and the Lord, then there is no personalist philosophy. In the impersonal philosophy, there is no reciprocation between the Supreme and the living entity. But in the personalist philosophy, there is. The example is often given that the Lord is like a desire tree, and whatever one wants from this desire tree, the Lord supplies. But here, the explanation is more complete. The Lord is here stated to be partial to the devotees. This is the manifestation of the Lord's special mercy to the devotees. The Lord's reciprocation should not be considered to be under the law of karma. It belongs to the transcendental situation in which the Lord and his devotees function. Devotional service to the Lord is not an activity of the material world. It is part of the spiritual world where eternity, bliss, and knowledge predominate. So I'll stop there. Any comments, questions in relation to the time factor, impersonal liberation, the Mayavadis Prabhupada spoke about in the purport, and how, their angle is everything is false. Everything exists in time, yet there are different phases of the time factor, present, past, and future. Present, past, and future are one. Every day we can experience the time factor as early morning, noon, and evening. And although morning is different from noon, which is different from evening, all of them together are one. The time factor is the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the Lord is separate from the time factor. True oneness, however, is not equivalent to the conception of the Mayavadis. The true understanding is that the differences are manifested by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The seed is manifested as a tree, which displays varieties in its trunks, branches, leaves, flowers, and fruits. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur therefore has sung, "My dear Lord, your creation is full of varieties. The varieties are one and at the same time different. This is the philosophy of Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva." Any points of clarity, input in regards this particular verse 7.1.11?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Jara Prabhu.
Thank you for your class. I am especially appreciating your point about the fact that devotional service is very rare. And given the fact that the time factor is gradually taking away everything from everyone, our span of life is being reduced at every moment. With every rising and setting of the sun, another day passes and is lost. No amount of money can buy back even one moment of time. So we have, by the grace and mercy of Srila Prabhupada, an opportunity to benefit ourselves or even perfect our life by rendering devotional service. But that opportunity can be lost at any time. Each time we have, at any time, something could happen. The opportunity could be lost. We could succumb to some sort of illness or accident. We can't predict what the future will hold and how things will play out. So if we're intelligent, we'll take advantage of the fullest advantage possible while we have the opportunity, because we can lose it at any time. The stakes are very, very high. We can derive the greatest benefit, or we can accept whatever sort of terrible fate we have created for ourselves by our past activities. We have an opportunity to save ourselves from, what is sometimes described as a fate worse than death. There are so many terrible things that can happen. Anyway, thinking about these things, sometimes I look back on my life and I lament all the opportunities for service that I missed, and sometimes foolishly I intentionally avoided. Times when I could have benefited myself, but I chose to do something else instead. And now I'm at a stage of my life at which opportunities are there are still opportunities, but things have changed. It is harder or impossible to render the sorts of service that I once did. I have to find newer ways to render service, and there are always ways to render service. Srila Prabhupada says that devotional service is not dependent on any material circumstances, but material circumstances may change the particular nature of the service that you render. You can always think of Krishna, you can remember Krishna as long as your faculties are intact, but service that you might have done with your physical body at some point, that's doomed to end. At some point, you will become old and feeble or diseased, and it will not be possible to do the things that you once did. It's hard to imagine when you're young and able-bodied, full of energy and vitality. It's hard to imagine the kinds of things that will happen. And even if you think that if I take good care of my body, it's going to hold up forever, it's just not true. Everything wears down. time gradually destroys everything. My god siblings and I have discovered that after years of rolling our japamala and our fingers, there's a point at which you develop terrible arthritis in your fingers and hands. The joints just actually wear down. The cartilage just erodes to the point where it's just bone on bone. And to roll your japamala becomes excruciating, terribly painful. I hear reports of my god siblings struggling, trying to find ways to deal with the fact that they can't manage a japamala anymore. And there are so many other issues. Old age is terrible. So, while we're young and full of energy and vitality, it's a great time. It's a big opportunity to do a bunch of things to benefit ourselves. And we miss that opportunity. There's no telling when we'll again get an opportunity, but time will change things. Time will change all kinds of things. You may be.
Reminder. Yeah.
Anyway, don't want to belabor the point, but thank you for your class, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Dr. Prabhu. Yes, thank you for that reminder. Sometimes we also procrastinate, our devotional service, thinking that there's sufficient time. It's still going to be around, long time, at least, in this lifetime of mine. So, I should pace things, but yes, now is the time to do devotional service. And I think, the other point to remember, which I often forget, is that devotional service is not a material activity. I think, like you mentioned, should not forget it's very rare and it's not a material activity. And so now is the time to do devotional service. And like you were mentioning that, when old age is there, it becomes more challenging, more difficult. So we want to attain perfection. We want to cleanse this heart of the lifetimes and lifetimes of conditioning. So now is the time to pack it in and, really focus on making spiritual advancement, shedding all of these layers, developing relationships with devotees. Now is the time. Otherwise, the time factor eats away, and before we know it, death is here. And so the question is, have I shed these layers of conditioning to be able to go back home, back to Godhead, or do I take another birth? So of course, we also hope and pray that if I do take another birth, I take another birth as a devotee. But we know how that is. It's like playing the lottery. It's a gamble, and we don't want any gambling. We have the special mercy of Srila Prabhupada that in this lifetime, we can purify ourselves and go back home, back to Godhead. But we have to purify ourselves. All this conditioning needs to be gone. Thinking of this person in this way, thinking of that person in this way, false ego. We need to purify completely. So if we're not 100% purified, no question of going back to Godhead. Yeah, this example of, Ajmil going back home, back to Godhead is often quoted. Well, if he chanted one name, surely I chanted one name, one pure name. Forget about it. Don't use excuses like that to justify getting purified. Well, my recommendation, maybe it's not everybody's recommendation. My recommendation is don't use Jagai and Madai as an example. My understanding is Jagai and Madai is there for inspiration, not as they were saved. Surely I haven't committed as much sinful activity as Jagai and Madai. But who knows in our past lives what we have been up to. So now's the time to perform devotional service and attain perfection in this lifetime. Don't wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow may never come. So, how to do this? I think I can shut this one down.